Move to item number 1, AB 44. Ms. Friedman, welcome.
Thank you, Chair Stone and members. To begin, I'd like to accept the 3 proposed committee amendments in the analysis, including page 8 regarding federal preemption, page 9 moving the effective date of the bill back a year to January 2021, and page 11 adding traditional before tribal, cultural, and spiritual purposes. AB 44 would make it unlawful to sell or manufacture a new fur product in the state of California. If passed, California would be the first state in the country to ban the cruel and unnecessary fur trade within its borders. Fur is not a byproduct of the meat industry. It comes from animals that are factory farmed or trapped in the wild purely for fashion. Fur farming and the fur trade are largely self-regulated. In the U.S., there are no federal laws providing protection for animals held on these farms, and fur-bearing animals are not subject to humane slaughter rules. Today, there are a variety of humane alternatives, both in terms of faux fur that is virtually indistinguishable from real fur, and alternative textiles that are just as warm or fashionable and a lot more fun. Companies around the world are fueling innovation in new and sustainable fabrics. Retailers such as Gucci, Michael Kors, Jimmy Choo, Armani, Burberry, and Chanel have made the decision to go fur-free, as have many others. Several cities, including Los Angeles, San Francisco, West Hollywood, and Berkeley, have already taken a stand by passing ordinances making it illegal to sell, trade, or manufacture fur within their boundaries. There's no reason for California to continue to partake in an industry that puts animals through such suffering for non-essential means. And just to be clear, our bill does not affect leather. It does not affect fur that is a byproduct of meat production, goat, cow, and sheep. So those fur products will still be allowable under the bill. AB is supported by the Gap, Hugo Boss, Patagonia, retailer H&M, Stella McCartney, Susie and Jack Welch, Eric Garcetti, and over 60 other designers, retailers, and organizations. With me today to testify in support of AB 44 is PJ Smith with the Humane Society and Mark Cheng, founder of Animal Hope and Legislation. I respectfully request an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. First witness, please.
Thank you, Assembly Friedman, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is PJ Smith, and I'm the Director of Fashion Policy for the Humane Society of the United States, a proud co-sponsor of AB 44. On behalf of the Humane Society of the United States and our supporters across California, we urge you to vote yes on this historic bill. For a decade, I've worked with brands and designers from Gucci, Michael Kors, and Chanel's to TJ Maxx to create policies that help animals and the environment. When these companies examine the fur trade, every vague claim, every certification scheme, they quickly realize there's no way to humanely source fur. And that's why so many of these companies are now going fur-free. As consumer awareness grows, the fur industry continues to roll out industry-funded marketing schemes to greenwash its trade. The latest is called Furmark, but no matter what they call it, every attempt has failed to address even the most serious animal welfare concerns. Under Furmark and similar schemes, wild animals are still crammed in barren cages for their entire life. They're still caught in leg-hold traps for days without food and water, and they still die by anal electrocution. The list goes on. And numerous investigations have showed that certified farms are still rampant with self-mutilation and other behaviors that are caused by stress and fear. The fur industry chooses to create smoke screens rather than prepare for consumers' changing tastes. In fact, just last year, when the International Fur Federation was trying to promote fur as ethical and ecological, France's independent advertising authority called those claims misleading and abusive and even based on lies. Those authorities also said numerous reliable reports show that the production of fur is extremely cruel and polluting, and that the final product contains toxic substances. Today's consumers, especially in California, care about animal welfare, the environment, and innovation more than ever. And fashion brands are responding by announcing fur-free policies and developing sustainable materials that have the same look and feel as fur, without the cruelty or environmental degradation. This idea resonates with consumers and throughout the fashion world, and now California can capitalize on the growing market. With the passage of AB 44, California will solidify its position as the nation's most innovative and humane state, and we urge you to vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Hi, my name is Mark Ching. I'm from a group called Animal Hope and Legislation. Part of our history as a group is we've gone undercover into different factories and slaughterhouses and fur farms across the U.S. and Canada and China and different countries. Those in opposition to this bill, they claim that much of the videos seen on social media are fabricated or outdated and old. And based on that fact, is a misrepresentation to the fur industry. Why we're so passionate is because I've been there myself. I've been into fur farms in China, Finland, which is a #2 exporter of fur, in the United States and Canada as well. And I can tell you there is no standard. There is no humane way to skin a fox. Many of these foxes are electrocuted and stunned. Some beat in the head. I've seen the cages that they're bred into and live their whole entire lives never touching ground. I've watched them kill them in masses when I was in China in this place called Hebei, which is a huge exporter to the U.S. for fur. There was a buyer from New York there, and in a matter of maybe 10 minutes, they killed 5,000 foxes, and they put them in these piles. These foxes, they don't use the meat. They raise only for their skins. And at the end, when they started to prepare them to rip their skin off, you could hear them screaming. And while it's not intentional for them to be alive, many of them still were. We've taken videos and we've shared these with members who've asked. We've used it in Los Angeles where we ban fur as well. They talk about having a standard, but when it comes to cruelty seen like that, there's no way you can regulate a type of industry that involves such inhumane and cruel methods. And we ask for a yes vote based on the fact that compassion, especially in our state, has to come first. I think we as Californians are progressive and we're ethical, and the consumers are asking for change. And I think it's time, and we are ready as a people, and I hope you will consider that. And thank you.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. All right. Anyone else who would like to support the bill? If you could come forward and give us your name and your affiliation, please. Just come to the microphone. Name and affiliation, please.
Crystal Moreland, representing the Humane Society of the United States, respectfully asking for an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ashley Lewis, representing PETA, support of AB 44.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Matt Robinson on behalf of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti in support.
Syed Rizvi from San Jose, support.
Michael Goldberg, Berkeley, California. I'm with Compassionate Bay, and I support.
Mike Sage, Santa Clara, support.
Miriam Leisrov, Santa Clara County Animal Activists for Animals, in support.
Wendy Bramble from Sacramento, California, representing Anonymous for the Voiceless and Direct Action Everywhere, I support.
Sanjeev Deshpande from Daly City, California, volunteer with Direct Action Everywhere, in support.
Kiana Jones from Berkeley, California, representing Direct Action Everywhere, support.
Debbie Nakamura from Sacramento, support.
Amira Tanner from San Jose with Direct Action Everywhere, and I support.
Thomas Chang from San Francisco, representing Direct Action Everywhere and Anonymous for the Voiceless, in support.
My name is Dan Cho. I'm from Mountain View, California. I'm here on behalf of Direct Action Everywhere, and I strongly support this bill.
Wayne Shung, one of the co-founders of Direct Action Everywhere, strongly in support of this bill, and with the millions of Californians who also support this.
Stacy Plakatis, San Diego, I strongly support.
Diana Navon with Direct Action Everywhere. I'm from Berkeley, strongly support.
Stephanie Kabrakis from Oakland, California, strongly support.
Matthew McKenna, Oakland, California, strongly support.
Amanda Oxford, Walnut Creek, California, strongly support.
Dylan Harmon from Berkeley, California. I'm with Direct Action Everywhere, and I strongly support.
Alona Zamora from the Sonoma County business community. I strongly support.
Masako Wikla. I'm from Oakland, California, volunteer for Compassionate Bay. I support.
Galen Hazelhofer, Sacramento, California. I strongly support.
Sandy Mel, Berkeley, California, Direct Action Everywhere. I strongly support.
Linda Middlesworth, Sacramento, California, on behalf of DXE, PETA, and Sacramento Vegan Society with 4,000 members, I strongly support.
My name is Dylan Wells, representing animal liberation organizations at Sac State University in support of this bill. Thank you.
Deborah Clausen, Nevada, California. I'm here for myself and my bunnies who have a wonderful life. I hope that you will provide the same for more. Thank you. Please support.
Debbie Bugeleisen from Pleasant Hill. I strongly support.
Liv Bunting, representing Direct Action Everywhere. I strongly support, and please support too.
Mariam Kamali from Belmont, California, in support.
Antonia Moore from San Mateo, a member of Direct Action Everywhere and Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I strongly support the bill.
Leslie Goldberg from El Cerrito, California, and I'm with Compassionate Cities, and I strongly support.
Giancarlo Martelloso from San Diego, California. I'm here with Direct Action Everywhere. I strongly support.
My name is Brianna Martelloso. I'm from San Diego with Direct Action Everywhere, San Diego Animal Save, San Diego Vegan Activists, and we're all in support of this bill. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Hannah Hafner, and I'm on behalf of Direct Action Everywhere and Anonymous for the Voiceless, and I support this bill.
I'm Jackie Lawrence. I'm from Berkeley. I'm with Direct Action Everywhere, and I strongly support this bill.
Romero Thomas Hernandez. I'm representing Anonymous for the Voiceless, Direct Action Everywhere, and the Animals, and I support.
Aaron Skinner from South Lake Tahoe. On behalf of the non-human individuals of this planet, I strongly support this bill.
My name is Christy Venrick Martin. I'm from Alberta, California, and I support this bill.
I'm Raza Petroskaite from San Carlos, California. I'm with Direct Action Everywhere, and I strongly support.
John Frohnmeyer from Berkeley, California. I'm with Direct Action Everywhere. I strongly support. Thank you.
Priya Sahani from Direct Action Everywhere. I strongly support this bill and for the millions of animals I've seen suffer.
I'm Veronica Rathkind on behalf of Animal Hope and Legislation and strong support.
Jay Fitzgerald from Stanislaus County, strongly support.
Jay Quigley for Berkeley Coalition for Animals, in support.
Orlando Torres, I support this bill because animals feel pain, plants do not.
Matthew Hamady on behalf of In Defense of Animals and its over 250,000 members in strong support.
Good morning. My name's Cassie King. I'm a resident of Berkeley and an investigator with Direct Action Everywhere. I've been inside of farms and seen animals
I'm sorry,
suffering.
we're not
for their
taking extra testimony. If
Okay.
you could just say that you support.
I
Thank
support. Thanks.
Fleur Dawes from Marin County, and on behalf of In Defense of Animals, strongly support.
Jacoby Moreno of Sacramento, California. I strongly support this bill.
Kira Garcia from Sacramento, California. I support this bill.
Sato Yamanaka, thank you all for being here. I support this bill.
Yeah, Cole Origenes with Anonymous for the Voiceless, Santa Clara County Chapter, and DXE, and in support of this bill.
Jenna Sinkinson from Sunnyvale, California. I'm with Anonymous for the Voiceless Santa Clara County Chapter, and I support this bill.
I'm Pauline Wu from San Francisco, California, Anonymous for the Voiceless Santa Clara County Chapter, and Direct Action Everywhere. Strongly support.
Daniel Broad on behalf of Sierra Club California in support.
Helene Meshar on behalf of the City of West Hollywood in support.
Cinder, Local Sacramento, support.
Alicia Santorio from San Francisco, California, Direct Action Everywhere and the SAVE movement. I support the bill.
My name is Matthew Dembski, and I'm from San Francisco, and I support this bill as well. Thank you.
Paula Santorio from Fairfield, California, in honor of my rescued bunnies, Celine, Twiggy, Dickens. I support this bill.
Alex Santurio, Fairfield, California. I support this bill.
Good morning. I'm Jason Davis from Folsom, California. I support this bill.
Tania Patricia Campos Suarez from Berkeley, California, an organizer with Direct Action Everywhere. I support this bill.
Doug Fuller, Berkeley, Direct Action Everywhere, in support.
My name's Anastasia Mel. I'm an organizer with Berkeley chapter of Anonymous for the Voiceless and Direct Action Everywhere, and I strongly support this bill.
Rachel Ziegler from Berkeley with Direct Action Everywhere. I strongly support this bill.
I'm Paul Darwin Picklesheimer from Berkeley, California, with Direct Action Everywhere and the Berkeley Animal Rights Center, and I support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? All right, seeing none. Anyone in opposition?
Nicole Smith from
You can
Studio
come up
City.
to the tables if you like and give testimony.
Gotcha.
I'll take 3.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Bezalel Stern of Kelly Dry & Warren LLP. Kelly Dry represents the International Fur Federation, Fur Commission USA, and the Fur Information Council of America. I'm here to explain why AB 44 is unconstitutional. First and foremost, AB 44 imposes a clear violation of the First Amendment's Establishment Clause. The Supreme Court in Lemon v. Kurtzman explained that for a law to not run afoul of the Establishment Clause, its principal or primary effect must be one that neither advances nor inhibits religion, and the statute must not foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. By excluding fur products used for religious purposes from its otherwise comprehensive ban on new furs, the law's primary effect is to advance religion by allowing the purchase and use of new furs for religious purposes only. Furthermore, by excluding religious furs from the ban, AB 44 will necessarily foster an excessive government entanglement with religion. The bill's language imposes a religious test before allowing the purchase of a fur product, a religious test which must be administered by state agencies. The Supreme Court explained in Hernandez v. Commissioner that pervasive monitoring for the subtle or overt presence of religious matter is a central danger against which we have held the Establishment Clause guards. Such pervasive monitoring is clearly present here. For this reason alone, AB 44 is unconstitutional. But there are additional reasons why AB 44 does not pass constitutional muster. Jasmine Sanders, an African-American writer, recently explained, quote, "As soon as black women could afford to buy mink coats, white society and white women said fur was all wrong, verboten, and passé." The Judiciary Committee analysis of AB 44 released yesterday underscores Ms. Sanders' point. The analysis states that there are no, quote, equal protection concerns related to African Americans because African Americans were not considered in the bill at all. But that is exactly the constitutional problem. By failing to consider the needs of and the impact on the African American community, AB 44 violates the U.S. Constitution's mandate of equal protection. The Supreme Court has explained that when an equal protection challenge to legislation is based on race, as this one will be, the legislation is subject to strict scrutiny. AB 44 cannot withstand strict scrutiny. As the bill's analysis released yesterday admits, AB 44 is based on scattershot allegations that have not been proven. In fact, the analysis admitted that the, quote, frequency of the practices, unquote, alleged is, quote, unclear, unquote, and statistics about the alleged harms are, quote, not readily available. On these facts, AB 44 cannot survive an equal protection challenge. The bill also prohibits expressive conducts by the creators of fur products. But the Supreme Court has explained that the Constitution looks beyond the written or spoken words as means of expression. In Anderson v. Hermosa Beach, the Ninth Circuit held that tattooing is purely expressive activity fully protected by the First Amendment. Apparel created with fur, clothing that is made to be sold at high-end boutiques and throughout the state clearly has the same First Amendment protections. Imposing a uniform ban on the sale or display of clothing created with fur violates the First Amendment. Such legislation is unconstitutional under clear Ninth Circuit and Supreme Court precedent. Due to time considerations, I will address just one more constitutional factor here, although there are more that should be considered when recognizing the unconstitutional nature of AB 44. That is the Dormant Commerce Clause. The Judicial Committee's analysis argues that the Dormant Commerce Clause would not be implicated because the law is, quote, indiscriminate, unquote, as to whether it impacts in-state or out-of-state fur farmers and manufacturers. But the analysis also admits that, quote, few, if any, fur farms are located in California, unquote. Thus, the legislative history of the bill shows that the bill will have an intended effect on interstate commerce. This makes AB 44 unconstitutional as violative of the Dormant Commerce Clause. The fur industry, which is already highly regulated, shares California's commitment to ethical treatment of animals. However, AB 44 is not the appropriate solution to this issue. It is unconstitutional. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Hi there. My name is Nicole Smith from Studio City. I'm strongly opposed to this bill. As a stylist, I represent the voices of hundreds of African American men and women who choose fur as an expression of their cultural heritage. We feel marginalized, and just because we choose fur, we should not be penalized for that. It is a long history in the community, and I just wanted to know, when is this marginalization going to stop?
Thank you. Next witness, please.
Good morning. Keith Kaplan, West Hollywood, California, Fur Information Council of America. Thank you for the chance to speak this morning. On behalf of the fur industry, we share the concerns for animal welfare that are expressed in AB 44, but the current ordinance is flawed. It's based on decades-old fake studies and videos that have now been proven to be staged. There are carve-outs for some fur types and certain cultural groups, but what's left is arbitrary and perhaps legally indefensible. We, too, want to keep bad players out of the market. But a ban is not the answer. A ban simply sends consumers out of California to purchase fur. California loses jobs and tax revenues, and in the end, the ban has absolutely no impact on animal welfare. But what a ban does do is it takes away the consumer's right to choose, to purchase renewable and sustainable products like natural fur, as opposed to synthetic fibers that violate the very core values of sustainability. Products like fake fur that are petroleum-based, non-biodegradable, and pose an environmental threat so real that even here in your own assembly, you've been presented with a microfiber bill. And as you note in the analysis, the consumers have spoken. Fur sales in the U.S. increased over 50% between 1993 and 2015. And in 2018, the U.S. manufactured more than $352 billion in fur product. We provided the author of AB 44 with an amendment that will address animal welfare on a global scale. It implements...
Excuse me. Hold on, please. Excuse me. This is not a time for others to weigh in. Would you excuse me? Thank you. You are being well amplified.
Okay, thank you. It implements a program called FurMark, a certification program that guarantees high standards of animal welfare and sustainability for farmed and wild fur sold in California. It is third-party monitored and uses the latest in blockchain technology to ensure traceability and transparency. California can take a leadership position launching FurMark to ensure mandatory compliance. As it spreads across the U.S., it will have a global impact on animal welfare, creating a template for all animal use industries to follow. In discussions on cannabis, I've heard some of you claim that the best way to prevent bad players in illicit markets is to legalize and regulate. That same rule applies in this case. I urge you to oppose AB 44 in its present format. Bans are not progressive. Bans are lazy. Let's work together to create a bill that will improve animal welfare in an impactful and meaningful way. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? If you could give us your name and your affiliation, please.
Dennis Albee on behalf of the California Grain and Feed Association. I want to thank the staff and the committee staff on working to get the amendments that I understand are being taken on like market animals that are being raised for meat as fur as a byproduct. So I understand, like rabbits, that's being addressed today. So I want to thank that. But I do want to question.
That's not being addressed. And I'm sorry, we are not taking further testimony. You can just give us your position on the bill, please.
Well, if that's in there, then we appreciate that, and we will continue to look at the bill and see as positions progress.
Thank you. And that amendment is not in the bill at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Matt Gray on behalf of Taxpayers for Improving Public Safety and also Cal Small Biz in opposition. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let me clarify then. So that bill is not being taken.
Correct. Not
okay.
at this point.
So at this point.
Correct.
Okay, sorry, I got miscommunication with staff. Then we oppose. Thank you.
Thank you.
Greg Zuck, Ventura, California. I oppose.
Thank you.
Jason Reisler, on behalf of the 330 family-owned mink farms in the United States, we oppose.
Thank you. Anyone else in opposition? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the committee. Questions, comments? Mr. Holden.
More of a comment. I support the bill. And I must say that the testimony of the three of you have been very, well, at least you, and quite frankly you, are rather insulting. To suggest that there's a cultural connection to this issue trivializes the point, and it focuses on a divisive issue that is not accepted by me. And if you're going to make your point, make it on a factual basis. And if this was what you would consider factual, then it does not sell with me, and it doesn't sell with African Americans that I know. And to use it in the way that you had, I'm sure there were other arguments that you could have made, but to choose to make it in the way that you made it, I think was not helpful to your cause, and quite frankly insulting to the people that you're trying to use to make your point. So I reject your testimony, I reject yours.
Mr. Colorado.
I just want to thank the author, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the author, Senator Friedman. I think she and her staff clearly have worked really hard to make exemptions that are appropriate, allowing certain industries, as well as the religious, faith-based exemptions. And I think it's been clear that Senator Friedman has been working really hard to focus on the issue at hand, which is the unnecessary cruelty caused by the sale of fur without inordinately impacting other areas, including the certain industries that have raised objections when the bill was first introduced. There's been a number of exemptions that have been put in there, and I want to commend the author for doing that, and I want to thank everyone for being here, as well as the chair and the chair staff for the excellent report. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Obernolte.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Assemblywoman Friedman, I'm actually very sympathetic to what you're trying to do here. I think we have a couple of fundamental ideas that are in tension. On the one hand, we all want to advocate for humane treatment of animals. On the other hand, for thousands and thousands of years, humans have killed animals for their flesh. And I don't think anyone is advocating here that we completely abandon the practice of using any animal products for anything. So we're trying to thread the needle in, as we do with the consumption of animal flesh, where we have regulations for humane ways to rear these animals and to slaughter them. And I'm wondering why you didn't take that approach with this bill, because you could have introduced regulations on the fur industry about how the animals were raised and slaughtered, as we do in other parts of animal husbandry, instead of just an outright ban.
Thank you, and that is a good question. A lot of the fur that's used in clothing comes from countries where it would be impossible for us to track and regulate. We have enough trouble tracking and regulating items that are clearly a public health danger, things like lead contamination in children's toys. And so we simply don't have the manpower or the staff to try to regulate items that are made in foreign countries. A lot of these products come from Asia, come from Eastern Europe, places that, oftentimes don't have the kind of network that would give us any sort of comfort about the way that the animals are being raised. But I'll say one other thing. When we're talking about wild animals that are used in these fur products, these are animals that by nature, they're not domesticated animals. It's my contention that the way that they are raised in captivity is by nature cruel, because these are animals that want to roam, that want to hunt. it's not a cow that, is pretty happy hanging out eating grass all day. These are animals that, by being confined, does lead to high levels of stress. I mean, zoos go through great lengths to keep their animals fulfilled, just because even limiting their roaming to the small amount of space that they have in a zoo is problematic sometimes for some of the species. So these are animals that I don't think there is a way of raising a lot of these animals, a fox or a mink, that is that's not cruel to the animal. And then because they're not food animals, the slaughter is not regulated. So I just think that I believe that if consumers understood the suffering that went into their garments, they wouldn't want to wear them. And I do think that this is an expression of California values. And I think that for California to take the stand and say, we want to make sure that products that are sold in our state are not done with the suffering of animals of beings that can't speak for themselves or defend themselves is very much in keeping with what California expects.
All right. I understand. Let me point out, though, that in other industries where the burden of regulating a product, the production of a product would be too great, we rely on certification standards from other agencies, and we just require that products that are sold here meet those standards. And the burden of proof is on the person who sells the product to prove that those standards have been complied with. And so, I mean, I think that would have been a better way of trying to accomplish this. I have kind of a related question, and it goes to one of the amendments that have been preferred that I understand that you're not accepting. And it's a question that I had also, which is that if an animal is being raised for its meat and there is a use for its fur, would it not be wasteful then to discard the meat? And so the suggestion is made that the bill should carve out an exclusion for fur that falls into that category. Can you explain why that's not something that you're willing to add to the bill?
Well, we certainly have added goats and animals where that's the case. And really the issues come around rabbits. And the concern with the sponsors of the bill and folks on our side is twofold. First of all, that a lot of the rabbits whose fur is used are not meat animals. They're rabbits that are raised for certain types of fur, so they're not generally the same rabbits. And secondly, that rabbits would then sort of flood the market to replace the other types of fur, and that, again, they wouldn't be using animals that were raised for meat. We're still talking to kind of the rabbit industry to see if there is a way of carving out, a narrow exemption for rabbits that are clearly and demonstrably have been raised for food. Because, again, this is not a bill that's intended to de facto ban the eating of rabbits. That's not what this bill is trying to do. And I totally agree that if you're killing the animal for food, that you should use every single bit of that animal. The flip side is that we don't want to encourage the killing of animals just for their fur, because that's wasteful and not sustainable. And we are afraid that the rabbit exemption would create more of a market to do just that. So we are still in discussions on that issue. But at this moment, we're not amending the bill with allowing rabbits.
All right. So I would encourage you, as the bill moves forward here, to continue working with all of the stakeholders to try and get to a place that's more of a middle ground. The problem is, as the bill stands now, there are a lot of us who, philosophically would like to be with you, but when we're not moving towards the middle, it makes it awfully difficult. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Mainshine.
Thank you. I want to thank you, Ms. Friedman, for bringing this bill. I'm pleased to support it. I've worked on a number of these issues, and I do think this is an inhumane practice. Especially when it's considered there's not a need for these products. There's not a. This isn't the only articles of clothing that are available to people, and to demonstrate a need that outweighs the inherent cruelty that exists in this industry isn't occurring here. So very happy to support it. Glad you're bringing it, and look forward to supporting it on the floor as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Mr. Gallagher.
So we had this bill in Water Parks and Wildlife last week. So just kind of following up, and I've actually looked more into this since that time, and I think it just makes me more sympathetic with the opposition. Because as I've looked into this, actually a lot of the fur comes from actual fur farms, and these are small family-owned farms where people actually raise these animals to then harvest the fur. Essentially, is what they do, right? And there's not many in California, and maybe you can speak to that. But I mean, most of them are out of state. Most of the manufacturers are out of state. But this is a legitimate farming livestock practice that's going on. And it is a very large industry. I'm not familiar with it. Probably not many of us up here are very familiar with it at all. We've probably never even been to a fur farm. We probably never even talked to any of these farmers, right? And these small family-owned businesses that now a huge market could in California could just be taken off the map. I mean, that's a pretty drastic decision to make when there's a lot of people that are impacted by this that really aren't in this room. That most of them live in other states who maybe can't be in this room right now, during a workday, all these things. So I think we have to take into account these things. Yes, you don't have personal experience with it, but those of us as legislators need to think about, hey, what are other people's perspectives who are in this industry, other people who are impacted, and I think that's important with this bill. But so as I understand your argument from last time, Assemblymember Friedman, it is inhumane to raise animals for fur only, but it's not if they're raised for food. Is that right?
I would say it's less sustainable, certainly.
I mean, is it inhumane or, I mean, this is about a moral principle of whether or not something's humane or not, right?
I think that there's a difference between animals that for generations have been domesticated and adjust and do well in captivity, and these animals which are by nature wild animals being kept in small cages or being trapped and left to die, for many hours in the wilderness. And I think that with the animals that are raised in captivity, I have more comfort level that a lot of them are being raised humanely and in keeping with the natures that they display. Whereas with these animals, with these particularly exotic furs, we have no regulation, we have no oversight. This is mostly happening, as you said, out of state and overseas. And I do think that there's a high probability that a lot of these animals have suffered in producing the fur.
Okay, so you brought up domestication. I mean, domestication is an age-old practice, right? We have some of our most loving pets, dogs, are domesticated animals, right? They used to be wild, and you could say, oh, why are we keeping them indoors with us? Or why are we keeping them out in a pen outside or in the backyard? We should let them roam free and wild because that's so wrong. I mean, that's the same logic, right? Domestication is an age-old accepted practice. And so now there are groups who are domesticating these animals. Yes, it's maybe newer, but they are domesticating them. Have you been to a fur farm and seen how these people are raising these animals?
I have not, but I do have the LA Zoo in my district, and I can tell you there's a big difference between domesticated animals and their relation to humans and their comfort being kept in captivity and animals that are wild animals, and their stress level when they're kept in captivity and raised in captivity. And the animals that we're talking about, it's been shown over and over again that they do not do well in captivity.
Well, domestication is a process, right? And so this is a process. It is a process. You're taking an animal maybe that used to be wild and domesticating it. And I would argue that we've done that very successfully with lots of other animals. And so I'll get back to, I mean, is it inhumane to raise a cow to be slaughtered for its beef and then for its leather? Is it? I think the supporters of your bill out here think that it is. Do you?
Are you asking me?
I'm asking you.
I would say it really depends on how you're treating them when they're alive.
It either is or it isn't. Is it?
Well, I disagree with that premise. That
well, then
doesn't
okay.
make a difference.
Let me.
Counselor, ask your questions and don't badger the witness.
Thank you for calling me counselor.
This
I
is not
appreciate
court.
that. I am a counselor right now. But see, there you go. You say it depends on how they're raised, right? Okay. Well, why doesn't it depend on how they're raised if they're being raised for fur? Couldn't they be raised humanely for fur as well?
I think that possibly for some types of animals, but for many, no, I don't think so, and not the way that they are raised. To make it economic for them, the way that they have to keep the animals in small cages, I think that is not humane for any animal to be kept its entire life in a small cage, especially when their nature is to be wild. I don't think that is what I would consider to be humane practice. And I wouldn't expect that from domesticated animals either. That's why in California we do have standards about the room that we give chickens, and the voters were very clear when they passed that initiative that they wanted to see animals raised in California done in a way that they felt was humane. So I think our voters have affirmed that they do want those standards.
Right, and they voted on it. This is not an initiative, but we do. I'm glad you brought that up. We raise chickens in cages. Now, we have rules about how much space that has to be, but chickens are raised in cages. Is that inhumane?
You know, it really depends.
Should we
on,
ban that?
Like I said, I believe that there are farm practices that I would not consider to be humane, and there are farm practices that are. But I don't have any confidence that in vast majority of fur farms across the world, from the evidence that I've seen, that there's much of an attempt for that kind of humane raising of animals.
Right, but don't you see that if I pass your bill today, if we pass your bill today, the same logic can now be applied to the cow, can be applied to the chicken? Are you going to come next year and say, hey, we should ban all raising of chickens for sale?
That's rather speculative. Can we stay on the topic of the bill?
I'm just
itself?
asking.
I
mean,
understand the distinction that you're trying to ask here, but Ms. Friedman, as all of us, have the ability to bring policy forward. If you don't want to support it, you don't have to, but don't try and argue the bill in a different form that is in front of us.
Well, I'm trying to argue the implication of this bill. It's the same logic. I mean, would you also make that same argument for banning any caging of chickens or banning?
You don't have to make that same logic. The bill is before us in its particular form, and any speculation about where it may lead is merely speculation.
I understand Mr. Gallagher's argument. I don't agree with the premise, but I do understand his argument.
Thank you.
How about harvesting of wool from sheep? We shear sheep for their wool.
That is allowable under the bill.
That's allowable.
Yes.
But in that case, we are raising that sheep just to take its wool, right? Is that?
Under this bill, that is a true statement.
Yes. In this bill, we are able to use meat-producing animals, sheep, goats, cows, for...
but not rabbits.
Right now, not rabbits. We are... that's a continuing discussion.
What about the implications for... This is a large industry. I think you pointed that out. It's a large industry. As I saw, it's like $350 billion of manufactured fur goods in the United States. Lots of farms, lots of manufacturing. If we get rid of this and ban one of the largest markets in the United States, California, the replacement will be faux fur, right? Which we know has environmental implications, that this faux fur, as it deteriorates, creates more plastics in the waste stream, which I know is something that you care a lot about. I mean, are you worried that this could lead to alternatives that are pretty damaging to the environment?
There's also cotton and wool. I'm wearing wool right now, not fur. So there's a lot of things people can wear as clothing to keep them warm. And then the bill does also allow cow fur and sheep fur, which is shearling. So if you really want fur, you can certainly use those products.
Right, but the faux fur, are you concerned at all about the environmental impact? Because as this policy goes into effect, other alternatives are going to come into the marketplace more. You have any concern about the environmental impacts of that faux fur now being more in the marketplace?
I think that it's, a spurious argument. There's a lot of different fibers that are on the market. There's a lot of, I've seen faux fur made out of cotton and other things as well. So I think it's, in general, I am concerned about polyester and fiber, but I will say that people probably wash their coats a lot less than they wash their yoga pants. If I was going to worry about one, I'd worry more about the microfibers coming off of clothing that's washed more frequently. I don't know how often you wash your overcoats, but probably not that often, and that's when you have a lot of the microfiber issue that's been mentioned.
Okay. Well, look, I think that this shows that there's a lot of problems with this bill that we're not thinking about. And I would just encourage my colleagues, like, rather than have maybe what might be an initial emotional response, even I had the response, man, who's even wearing fur? I don't wear it. It's not something I'm very familiar with. But as you look into this, there are a lot of people who do, right? And there is a marketplace out there for people who are saying, don't use fur, and it's working. There's a lot of people who are going away from that. The marketplace is working from that standpoint. But there are a lot of people out there, and there's also a lot of people who are legitimately farming. They've domesticated animals in a way that has an accepted practice, and I think we should think about what the implications for that. I do think there's also a dormant commerce clause issue in here, because ultimately, who are we affecting? We're not affecting our own people. We're affecting people in other states who are a big part of this industry, and we're taking completely out of the marketplace their ability to sell goods interstate that are legitimately raised, that are humanely raised, that are using domestication practices that we all actually have the benefit of to this day. When you eat beef, you're benefiting from a domestication of an animal that we raise. Okay, we raise it for food. We also raise it for leather. We also raise it for a lot of other things. And to somehow like just point this out, one industry that's going to have a huge impact on them when we don't really know a whole lot about it, and we haven't taken the time to hear from those folks about how it impacts them and about what their practices actually are. The author's never even visited a fur farm, and yet is running a bill that's going to have a huge impact on these small family-owned businesses throughout the United States. I think we owe that at least to just not have a emotive, knee-jerk response to this issue, and to try and treat it with a little bit more respect, a little bit more understanding of how this industry works. I will be voting no.
Ms. Reyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Friedman, thank you for bringing this bill to us. I think the one thing I do agree with Mr. Gallagher is that our first reaction is, yes, we've got to stop this. It's an inhumane treatment of the animals. We've got to stop it. I appreciate your thoughtfulness in speaking with the stakeholders, in looking for ways where you're not going to adversely affect everybody, in figuring out how we get to where we want to go, and that's to stop the inhumane treatment of animals, to stop using the fur, and to figure out what the process is to get there. I appreciate all of your comments here. The fact that you haven't visited a farm, I understand that most of those are outside of California. And you made a comment earlier about how California leads, and we do lead. And the voters have told us how to lead in many occasions, and I appreciate your leadership on this particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez and then Mr. Chu.
From all the back and forth, I just want to be really clear. This bill just prevents the sale of fur, correct? Okay, because the line of questions that we just went down, we could go down in a completely different form, because we're talking about domesticated animals. Well, what if I wanted a farm of domesticated dogs to start eating and wearing? I'm hoping that people are evolved enough to understand why that wouldn't be a good idea. As somebody who has a probably slightly different view of animals than other folks on this committee, I don't think dogs belong inside. I do have a huge respect for all animals being able to exercise their freedom in natural state, but that's not the situation by which we live, and so I understand that. But this bill only has to do with whether we have evolved enough to decide that a cruel treatment of animal for a unnecessary product, something we can do without, that is in fact just a symbol of decadence really in our society, and has nothing to do with the need to keep warm anymore because we have it's a fashion statement, a statement of wealth. I'm really not concerned a spiral that we're getting into, as maybe my colleague. I think on this question, it's very clear. I want to thank you for bringing this forward. I want to, I'm going to support the bill and continue to support efforts one bill at a time as we bring them forward if they make sense, and not go down some bizarre discussion about domesticated animals and how we domesticate an animal and whether or not we should eat domesticated animals, because I think that gets us in a different direction that's really gross. So I thank you for bringing this, and I hope we end this discussion soon.
Mr. Chu.
Was actually going to make pretty much the same point. I don't think we need to debate this too much longer, except the suggestion that domestication should potentially allow for the justification of skinning dogs or cats. I don't think that is what our colleague from Yuba City is suggesting, but that is the logic of where you are going with this. And I also want to say that regardless of whether the author of this bill has visited a farm that has been involved in inhumane or cruel practices doesn't suggests that she doesn't have the right to propose that we ban such cruel and inhumane practices, and I think that is a perspective that I share. I also want to say that there has been a lot of invocation of the Constitution today on arguments that don't make any sense whatsoever. Let me just say, it's been suggested that somehow we're violating the Dormant Commerce Clause. And for anyone who actually cares about the Constitution, if you could please read the committee analysis, because committee staff has spent an awful lot of time to go through what the Commerce Clause does or does not do. This bill applies to all fur products originating anywhere, regardless of whether they're manufactured or raised inside or outside the state. So there is no basis for a Dormant Commerce Clause objection, and I'm not sure where that would come from. Similarly, the suggestion that this bill would violate the First Amendment right to free exercise of religion, again, the bill lays out exactly what the arguments are for it. We can potentially have a dispute about it. If the bill passes, I look forward to seeing that challenge in court. But invoking the African American community, invoking the First Amendment is truly beyond what I think the courts have said in this area. One final comment I do have for the author, which is I do understand there's a discussion with the rabbit industry about what to do in this area. My understanding is at this time, as I think you said, rabbit meat is not very popular. So the concern is if rabbit fur becomes really the sole major kind of fur that's allowed in California, it will potentially dramatically increase the number of rabbits who are killed. And instead of rabbits being raised for meat, they could be raised for fur. So more rabbits would be raised for slaughter. I have to admit, I am very concerned about the potential amendments on this, so I do hope, and I know you will, think about this very carefully about whether we would allow a future exemption in this area. At this moment, I don't think that would be something I would support, but obviously happy to have more conversations about this as the bill proceeds. All that being said, happy to support this bill, and if there has not yet been a motion, happy to make that motion.
There has been a motion and a second. All right. Thank you, Ms. Friedman. Based on this conversation, I look forward to Mr. Gallagher supporting our efforts to address microfibers as a plastic waste, since that's clearly something that you're interested in. A lot of us are interested in that, too, so I look forward to your support there. As far as the constitutional analyses, I find them to be very creative, very interesting. That does not make them true, nor necessarily dispositive of anything that's before us. The analysis, I think, lays that out pretty clearly. Ms. Friedman, you may close.
I would just like to thank everybody for a very robust discussion. I would like to thank the activists who took the time to come today to express their passion for this issue and their compassion and humanity. I would like to agree with Mr. Gallagher that I have not visited a fur farm, but one of my witnesses had and did tell you what he saw with his own eyes, and I do think that we should all think about that. And lastly, I'll just say in closing that Michael Kors and Gucci both attempted to go and find humanely raised fur products to use and came back and said that after a thorough examination of fur products around the world, they didn't believe that humanely raised fur existed. So with that, I would ask for you to cast an aye vote today. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a motion and a second. That motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Call the roll, please.
Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Gallagher? No. Gallagher, no. Chow? Chu?
Aye.
Chu, aye. Gonzalez?
Aye.
Gonzalez, aye. Holden?
Aye.
Holden, aye. Kalra?
Aye.
Kalra, aye. Fong? Mainshine?
Aye.
Mainshine, aye. Obernolte? No. Obernolte, no. Petrie Norris? Aye. Petrie Norris, aye. Reyes?
Aye.
Reyes, aye.
That bill is out. Thank you. Let's go back to item number 2, Ms. Gonzalez, AB 170. I'm sorry, Mr. Jones-Sawyer is waiting patiently, so we need to go to Mr. Jones-Sawyer. So item number 7, AB 1091. Okay. So we're going to call the absent members. Item 2, which is AB 170, Gonzalez. Call the absent members.
Calra. Calra, aye.
Item 3, AB 177, Gonzalez.
Calra. Calra, aye.
Item number 5, AB 669, Holden.
Calra. Calra, aye.
Item number 7, AB 1091, Jones Sawyer.
Calra. Calra, aye.
And item number 8, AB 1092, Jones Sawyer.
Calra. Calra, aye.
And that completes our business for today. We are adjourned.